Blessings of Light. I'm Reverend Harrison Roy Hesketh, and you're about to see a lecture. When we begin the path, sometimes we do not know, for the path is windy, and we do not see the bends or the end. But as we travel the path, it becomes straight and narrow until we reach our goal. Sit back and intensify now your attention, concentration, observation into a meditative state, and open your contemplative and superconscious natures to absorb blessings.
Mystical music and the mystical side of things, and before I start with into the lesson, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my musical background. When I was a young man, about 15 years old, I went to the Salvation Army, and I played a horn there, and I did that for about a month, and then was kicked out of the band because I fooled around too much. I started with a cornet, and then I went to one of those big baritone horns. In school, I played violin, and I was a violinist, and I fooled around a lot there too. So I didn't learn much about music, and I got kicked out of the band. So I had two failures right off, and I never really learned music theory or any of that. So I'm not coming from that point of view. The point of view I'm coming from, the only other musical training I had was when I was a boy from about 8 till I was about 13. We had a player piano which we could pump, and so that's as close as I came to playing the piano, and that's the extent of my musical training until I came to acquire this instrument known as the harmonium. The harmonium came to me about 5 years ago, and I bought it off of a young man who brought this from a Krishna temple in India. He had got the harmonium over there at a Krishna temple and had brought it over to here, and I bought it off of him for $50, and a month later he come back wanting to buy it for $125, but I'd already started using it for a sound of Om. And what I did was I just took off the bottom key, and I would pump the harmonium to the key of C, and at that point I didn't know it was the key of C or what key it was. I just knew that sounded good, and it went something like this. So I was just going Om, 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 and then I would lead people through a process and play this note. Well, every note calls a color, and I didn't know at the time that the key of C called a blue ray, and a spirit appeared to me, which was a blue round disc about 6 inches in diameter, and it appeared to me just off of the right of the harmonium as I was playing it. And so I began to strike certain chords on the harmonium and play those in the meditation too. And it was very slow and very precise. The only thing that I acquired was I practiced to bring the individual to a meditative heartbeat, which was between 42 and 52 beats a minute. So I practiced counting the beats, the pump on the harmonium, because it's a hand-pumped instrument, and it's not a string or a woodwind as pipes go, but it's like reeds, like on a harmonica. And it's put into a big instrument like this here, and they make several different sizes of this harmonium. This has 3.5 octaves on it, and the octaves of the harmonium work between the blue ray and the white ray, and they take the green, yellow, the orange, and the red ray in, and we'll be talking about the octaves and that. And so I began to play this harmonium, and different masters would come to me. A master that came to me was El Moria, and I learned a song, I Am Light, and started to get into a lot of I Am Light kind of energies, and I would practically play a symphony because I didn't have any time limit for any song. Most of my processes went for at least a half hour to an hour, And so I would just pump on the harmonium that long, and I would keep it at the between 42 and 52 beats a minute in order to get that meditative heartbeat. And I'm telling you these things because they may strike a key in you that will open up your channel for playing. I also found out that in the back of the neck of the individual, when you're playing music, it vibrates the nerve centers at the back of the neck. And different music has different effects on this nerve system. And working with the etheric bodies, the chakras, and the energy vortexes, and the nervous system in the individual, I was getting the information at very, very subtle levels and applying it to the music itself. And wasn't really playing any music for the first couple of months, just oming along with the key of C, and every now and then I'd hit a chord. And the chord I would hit would be a C, E, and G, and then I go to C, F, and A, and then C, G, and B, and then I finally dropped the B to B flat to get it sounded better to me for some reason. So I was just going on sound. I didn't play by ear, I played by hand. My ears, wouldn't fit on the keyboard, so I had to play by hand. So some people kid and say, you've learned by ear. Well, what I learned was by the feeling of it, how it felt to me, how it felt in the energies, how it felt to me. And I knew if I felt good when somebody was paying attention to me, they would feel good. So I knew the metaphysical side of when people pay attention to you, they're picking up what you are. And so when you're playing, I would go just right into the sound and the music, and I wouldn't pay attention to the people. I would just concentrate on the music. And if I felt good, then the people would give me good comments. But if I try to watch them and see what their reactions was, they would say they didn't get much, you see, because they were just paying attention to me, and I was paying attention to them, and nothing was happening. And but when I paid attention to the music and got really into feeling the music, my body becomes an instrument, too, of vibrations that vibrate at a subliminal and hyper vibrational level, meaning it reaches deep into the individual's nervous system at low vibrational levels as well as high vibrational levels beyond the regular spectrum of sound. And so my body became resonating the vibrations. I also did a lot of chanting at the time. And I chanted hours at a stretch. First thing I'd do in the morning when I got up is I would chant. And I would chant through my energy centers, from my base chakra to my crown chakra. Now the chakras are energy vortexes in the body that are over particular levels of nerve ganglia. Like the base chakra is the nerve ganglia, or cross-section of nerve ganglia, right at the base of the spine of the individual. And this particular chakra controlled the legs and the sexual organs and the time, memory, and senses of the individual. And I knew all the powers of this particular chakra, and I'm not going to get into really a deep description of the chakras. You'd have to, for this particular class. The second chakra was the spleen chakra, and that was the nerve ganglia over the spleen and at the small of the back here, and it vibrated at an orange color as the base chakra vibrates at a red color, and this is for the spectrum that's on the planet, not a cosmic spectrum or some of the other spectrums of light that you're going to tune your nervous system to. So this is just a basic planetary attunement here on these chakras, though I knew the other chakra attunements at that time. I used a lot of the cosmic spectrum of attunement to the chakras. The third level was right over the navel and right below the shoulder blades to the small of the back, and that was yellow, and that nerve ganglia there is right over the navel, your belly button or navel, or some call the bippy, right over your bippy there. Then from below the shoulder blades up to the top of the shoulder blades was green, and right over the heart center is green. And so the nervous system in there responded to the green. And then from the top of the shoulder blades to the base of the skull is blue, and over the throat is blue. And then over the brow area and into the pituitary gland was indigo, and then at the crown is violet. And so I attuned to those colors, and I attuned to those levels and those vibrations, and would feel the music in different parts of my body. And I didn't understand the notes and how they opened up the centers and that then. See, the way I was taught, the masters gave me experience, and then they would take and explain what it was. I would first be initiated and then get the information. Now, each one of these chakras also stimulate a gland in the body. And so the glands of the body excrete hormones, and there's a chemical action that takes place in the blood itself by the increase of hormonal excretion when you vibrate at any particular chakra or any particular level there. Let me put these over here for Jesus, these beautiful flowers. Thank you for the masters. God bless you. Thank you. And so I knew that the vibrations also caused certain hormonal excretions. And so I would play music that would stimulate my crown or my heart center or something where I'd feel it there. I'd hit a note and I'd play around with it. And I do a lot of practicing by myself. And this afternoon I'm going to give you the system for channeling music. But this morning we're just going to discuss these basic things. So the testes or ovaries of the woman was stimulated by the base chakra. And then as I went to the spleen chakra, which isn't on this here, the spleen would excrete its hormones into the blood system for the second level, or emotional energy. And then for the will center, or the navel chakra here, the adrenal glands, and the pancreas would be stimulated. For the heart center, the thymus gland. For the throat chakra, the thyroid and parathyroid glands. And then for the brow chakra, the pituitary gland. And for the crown chakra, the pineal gland. And so those were the glands that was stimulated by this music. Now all of this was realized later, in fact years later, and I'd been using it for years before they gave me the information of it. I just was a channel, and I worked as a channel. And so I didn't study how find that till later, how this was affecting the body. I just knew how it affected me, and if I knew it affected me and I was a human being, it would affect other human beings, because basically our bodies are constructed the same. We have the same gland system, we have the same nervous system, we have the same blood system, we have the same build, legs, arms, torso, head. So I knew that if my body resonated and vibrated and I could feel it, I could also be assured when somebody was paying attention to me that they would feel that. And so in the beginning I would say, pay careful attention to me. And I would ask the individual to pay attention to me. And so I could pass or channel those vibrations on to them. I saw, as I played certain things, I saw color coming, because I'm being a trained clairvoyant, I could see the color. And when I'd see other people play and other music I would listen to, and that, I would also get an awareness of a color vibration. There's red music, like rock and roll and percussion and those kind of things, which have a heavy beat. And then there was emotional music and intellectual music and soulful music, and then there was a creative music, and then there was a spiritual music, and then a very transcendental type music. And so these were the various levels of music that I kind of looked at and saw. Now what I wanted to accomplish in the individual was basically to bring them to a deep meditative channeling state, ability to channel consciousness, to have a direct connection with God, or a deity representing God, either a master or angelic force or cosmic force, or something that would connect them to a greater source than their self. And so that was my object in playing the music. All of my music, I actually took the stop key that takes and stops the sound coming through the lowest C on my harmonium. I took that off, and I've never had it on there since. And so all the music I play constantly has this blue ray coming out. And blue is a calming ray. And it calms and also anesthetizes the system. And so it takes them into a deep meditative state because it anesthetizes the nervous system. And so I used that for an anesthetizing ray. I used everything to take command over the individual when they were under my direction, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And so I would numb their body out, so to speak, with by giving them a shot of blue ray energy or playing the key of C. And so I constantly would play this key of C behind all of my meditations. And then when I would chant, so I let the harmonium teach me how to stay at a particular key. And I would chant in the key, and in a particular key. And so all of the chants I did, I also chose a note and a key. Well, later on I found out that each level has a note, and each level has a key of its own. And mystical music is tone plus number plus color plus form equals nature. And that's how the nature of things are born. And the nature of things on different octaves naturally have different tones, different numbers, different colors, different form. And so that's the basis of this type of mystical teaching. Then I realized that there was harmony that came from melody and rhythm. And so I had a rhythm going, my 52 beats, my 42 to 52 beats a minute. And if I wanted to speed them up, I would speed that up, you see. And I would put a melody with it. And so I just put this together, and this gave me a harmonizing ray. And I didn't know that was what was happening on the physical. I didn't know these words for it. I just did it. And I was being impressed by this blue light. And when I didn't see the blue light in the air, that spirit floating, I had a blue light that I turned on and stared at next to the harmonium. And I wouldn't watch the keys. I would watch the light, and my hand would go over the keys. So I was actually connecting and letting that energy come right through me and play the harmonium. Now, since then, I've got keys. I got a chord, G chord, from Beethoven. I've got the C chord and the C music from Kathumi, and I would even feel at times I was high in the mountains in some place where there was a large organ, and I'd feel like I was attuned to somebody was playing that organ, and like they were coming through me. And so I would have these visions and things like that, and I would just play. And then once we moved into a house, and they had an organ in there. And boy, I got on and I just started playing that organ. I could play with two hands, my feet would bounce around, all this stuff. And it was just like the energy coming through me. As in the East, they call that shock day. The shock day come in, or the divine energy came in, and it would just happen. And I would, if it sounded good and made me feel good, I knew it would sound and make other people feel good too. And if it took me into deep states of consciousness, I felt it would take other people into deep states of consciousness too. And so that's the way I just started channeling the music. And now I have many, many, many songs that have come through in these last 5 years, and I'm pretty well familiar with certain ways of playing the harmonium. This year is the first year I've come out of just playing in the key of C. And I've added the key of G a G chord, and I've added an E chord, and I had a D and A chord, and and some other chords that I've added now in the music. And most of it was right there in that between C and C, between the two blue energies. And so that's just the way I kind of did it. As I found that each of these notes had a color, the key of C, the note C, which is the first one before the two black keys, that was a blue ray. And the C sharp or D flat, had a dark blue ray, and D had an indigo ray. The D sharp or E flat, as it is called, had a violet color. I mean a dark indigo color, and then it went into violet when it hit the E. Then the F is an ultraviolet, and the F sharp or G flat is a red violet. The G is a red. The G sharp or A flat is pink or rose-colored red. The A is orange. The B flat or A sharp is yellow, and the B is green. And so this is the rainbow spectrum to the one octave, C to C. Then as I got deeper into finding the vibrations for each one of the centers, I found that the crown, the key of E, opened up the crown center, opened up the crown chakra, the head centers, up at the cerebral vortex up there, and it would open up that part of the body. And this is the etherical scale. This is the etherical sounds. Pardon me, not the inner sound. Then I found the inner sound had another vibration. And I found also the inner and the outer sound, or the etherical sound, physical etherical sound, which was E at the crown, also was E for the inner sound and the note Do. And that was the inner sound. And so that inner sound is like the ringing in your ears that you hear, that natum that's ringing inside of you. The inner sound, when I talk about the inner sound, is the natum and the sound of the natum. And everybody has a different natum sound, or a different sound of their natum. And so this inner sound is actually the sound of the natum, or inner sound of the individual, and the sound of that particular center. And so when you concentrate on that chakra vortex, you hear that sound, the key of E, very, very high E, at the crown. And you hear it outside and inside. And so the etheric is E, and the inner sound is E. On the filament of the mind is E. Then at the brow center, it was B flat at the brow, opened that etherical center up. But inside, the sound was G sharp in the note law. The throat center was B flat, and the inner sound was F sharp and fa. And the heart center is F sharp, and the inner sound of the heart center was D, or so. And the navel center was C, and you can see how we were, that's the thinking mind, the navel center, and you can see how we anesthetized the navel center by using the key of C, the blue ray on it. And inside it was A sharp, and the note Re. And then the spleen was D, and the inner sound is C, and the note is Me, and the base was E, the same as the crown, to open that up, and the inner sound was A, or the note of T. And so I found those. And then I found also that below the base chakra and the hips and the thighs, the etheric body there responded to F, the knees responded to G, the ankles responds to A, and the feet respond to B, and the whole etheric body around the individual responds to C again, because it's a blue-white, you see. And so it stimulated that etherical energies of the individual, which takes and the etheric body projects the matrix or archetype pattern for the physical body to be drawn about. And so I found how these things in the body stimulated the nervous system, the sympathetic and the sympathetic nervous systems, or the autonomic part. And so through the spine, your spine has got 14 lines of energy, and so they're like strings. And so when sounds hit you, they vibrate your strings, so to speak. They vibrate your body, and people are tuned differently. Some people like fast, hard beating music, and other people like very subtle music, and then there's everything in between, all these variations in between. And so when you're responding to music, someone is striking your chords, so to speak, or your spinal cord, or your nerve cords, and it has a definite effect, especially in the medulla oblongata. There is a cord within the back of the head, right at the base of the skull, and when that's hit, and someone holds that note, sustains that note, you can go through things involuntarily. And in some of the jazz era and some of those eras, they used to hit those notes on clarinets and on saxophones and that, and people would just go wild out there in the group, you know, jumping around, jitterbugging and everything, because the music would cause that vibration, see, in their head, and their nervous system would just start going. And some people say, well, that music moves me, you see, and it's because it strikes there at the back of the head. And people can actually be controlled by a steady vibration and an ultrasonic sound pointed at the back of their head in their particular key, and it would control them. And if it was hit at high enough frequency, they would pass out. And so in some of the new sonic weapons they're devising in the different countries that go to war and stuff, they're using this very thing against people instead of for the upliftment of people. They use this sonic sound, which takes and vibrates in their nervous system and actually can knock them out. As I was seeking to find a deeper cosmic level to the note system, I noticed that there was a cosmic spectrum that was a heavenly spectrum and a man's cosmic spectrum, and these are all with the colors of indigo, blue, green, yellow, and violet. And so those were the colors there. And so the 5 black keys that are on the scale, the first black key is B, the second is blue, the second one is indigo, the third one is blue, the second one there is indigo, and the last of those 3 there is violet. And then the notes to when you're playing the keys, the white keys, which there are 7 of those, it goes indigo, blue, green, yellow, violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow. And so that's the vibrations of those keys, and then it goes back to that indigo color there. And so that's the cosmic spectrum, and that vibrates in the higher fields of the nervous system, the very, very subtle fields, dealing with the parasympathetic level or rejuvenating level of the individual. I asked for a little information, and this is for the 7 octaves on a piano. Now, a piano is actually a man-made instrument, and unlike some of the other instruments in the world, like the harmonium and the instruments that they developed in India, were tune you more to the inner sounds, the sounds you hear inside of yourself, where the Western music is to titillate and to soothe the personality or the outer man. And so the piano was really devised for outer man. And it has 7 octaves. The first octave is violet, the second octave is indigo, the next octave is blue, the 4th octave is green and yellow, the 5th octave is orange, the 6th octave is red, and the 7th octave is white. And so when you're up in those really fine keys, that's white. And so you can start seeing where people play on the piano, where the notes are played on the piano, what kind of colors and energy they're sending out in those particular octaves. My harmonium goes from half octave of white and a half octave of blue, and the whole octave of green, yellow, orange, and red. There are 52 keys that are white on the piano, and 36 that are black, which is a total of 88, and they produce 124 sounds or tones. And the lowest C octave, as I said, is violet, and the highest C scale or octave is white. Now there are chord spectrums that brought creation into being that deal with cosmic energy and deal with the cosmic force. And the mystic always seeks to bring alive in any individual that part of them known as the cosmic side of things, or the cosmic center. And so the individuals are attuning to the cosmic energies by the vibrations that you attune them to in that area. So in the mystics side of looking at things, we seek to bring into being the sounds of the mystical realm. And so on the board here, I've written the chords, and they're struck in that succession. And before we go into that, what I want you to do is to attune with me just for a moment, and close your eyes, and let's go in, and we're going to give you an idea of creation. And this idea of creation is one that I had learned, and I realize it plays a great part in your ability to attune to these higher spheres. And later this afternoon, I'm going to give you an exercise to actually tune to deeper energies of this. So just relax and feel yourself going within. Now in the filament of the mind, you see a still clearness. Just a still clearness. And in the beginning, God was all-pervading oneness. And he lived and moved and had his being in a deep sleep state. And in the ancient Hindu teachings, and where I learned this particular attunement was through the ancient Hindu teachings, this was called the night of Brahma, or the night of creation. One aspect of God awakened, and God realized himself, and this was the first movement towards creation, or the dawning of the day of creation, or the day of Brahma. God gave a great out-breath, for God was everything that is, was, and always will be, eternal, ever-existing, ever-pervading, all-pervading consciousness, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscience, omni-being. And in the out-breath, the separation upon the filament of consciousness, the out-breath of creation came, and the worlds were breathed into being. The lords of the flames, the lords of the light, came into being as darkness was separated from the light, and the light was separated from darkness. And so great spheres of light began to breathe out in the great creation, the out-breath. And level after level was created. The lords of the flames came into being. All the great suns and stars and planets were breathed out in this way. God breathing upon the filament of his being. The filament of his mind, creating image. And this out-breath created the sound, the intoning. The tone of creation began to vibrate and brought that which had been inert, that which had been laying in sleep, into action. So all the inertness has the potential of action in it when it is stimulated by the holy breath or movement. Color, light, sound, and motion was breathed as the four creative principles and breathed out on the filament. The great spheres were endowed with the same creative power that God had. He built things in his image. In his image, which was all-pervading, which was present in all things, as all things. As he breathed into creation this great power, the second outbreathing gave forms, and the lords of form came into being. And each great son had the ability to create, just as the Father had created. And each sun outbreathed its planets and satellites. And each planet breathed out its satellite. Whether it was an etheric or actual physical, each sphere has music to it. And so this sounding of vibrations continued until it became the most minute, the smallest atom and the particles within that atom, which are worlds within worlds, all individualized, from the smallest to the largest, from the largest to the smallest, the outbreathing of creation. Then God's great power breathing upon all creation, bringing into being the various levels one by one, sounded the 7 tones of creation that brought things into visibility and sounded the 5 invisible tones. The orifices in the bodies of each plane and dimension responded to the 7 visible and 5 invisible waves. The life wave was breathed upon creation, and harmony and melody and rhythm came into being. Everything had a tone, a number of its vibration, a color, and a form, as God created, as Shakti moved in Path.I. God in his mercy and compassion, breathing out, gave to each its power, each its individuality, first giving the flames of fire or substance to creation, and then the individuality. Then the very love of God spread upon the universe, the love that held these things together, that drew them together. And so the out-breath of love came from God's Holy Spirit, Holy Ghost, the out-breath. The wisdom of God was the breathing then into creation. And the lords of form brought in each pattern, holding each one as the second octave of individuality was breathed. Then the lords of wisdom come to teach each individual their pattern and gave to each the matrix for their creation. This holy divine breath now taking on manifestation, becoming solider and solider from that finest and finest energies. The second octave of form breathing out in the way of individuality. The great arcing angels of consciousness, arcing the 7 rays, getting denser and denser. The lords of mind attaching to each of these the wisdom to have its own identity and to move and have itself recreating beingness. The angels carrying the energies from octave to octave to humanity and to the elementals. And the elementals was created, and man was created in God's image to enjoy all of these other levels of being and to expand vibration by vibration, octave by octave, back to the Godhead, to his true nature as God experiencing, to come back to that pure realization. So we see in this great out-breath the great spheres of light pouring out into creation, and each creating until we come to that individual conscious manifestation called man. And in him blazes the sun, his Atman, himself, the self-effulgent flame of light, his very being. To enjoy and to realize all of creation. So now just feel yourself back in your body and bring yourself back into the room. The melody is the father aspect. It deals with the truth and intelligence. The harmony is the sun, deals with love and feeling. And rhythm is the Holy Spirit, that deals with wisdom and motion. So these are the threefold nature of creation: melody, harmony, and rhythm. The melody, again, is the Father, truth and intelligence. Harmony is the Son, love and feeling. And rhythm is the Holy Spirit, wisdom and motion. Now, in each body of consciousness, you have the vibrations of consciousness. And as we look up here on the board, we see the various chords of creation. The Lords of Flame there with the first chord was A sharp, E sharp, and C double sharp. The second chord or sounding of that was B sharp, C double sharp, E sharp. The third chord was A sharp, E sharp, double C sharp. The fourth chord was A sharp, F double sharp, D sharp. The fifth chord was A sharp, E sharp, C double sharp. The sixth chord was B flat, or B sharp, G sharp, double sharp, E sharp, and D sharp. And the last chord was A sharp, E sharp, and C double sharp. Now the chords, the explanation of the chords, the general rule for chords in music is 2 notes in the bass clef. And that represents the positive and negative energies. And so in the bass clef, when you're playing things with the bass clef, that's balancing of positive and negative energies, and bringing that balance of those 2 energies into being. And in the 3, in the triple clef, this is the Trinity. In the 3, when you put 3 notes to a chord, you're using Trinity force. And that's the positive, negative, and neutral plane. The 2 and the 3 equal 5. And this is the number of man's senses as developed at this present time. The chord in music is composed of a combination of tones which blend harmoniously when sounded together. The lowest tone being at the root or the keynote of that chord, and the other 2 notes forming the chord may be in harmony with that one particular note, else there would be a discord as a result. Each person has his or her own keynote, the sound that they vibrate at. And this is located in the lower part of the back of the head at the base of the brain. And soft tones heal and dominating tones